Welcome to the What is Stoicism podcast.
To prepare for the day ahead, the Stoic Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius would often remind himself in the morning of the type of people he was likely to come into contact with. At the start of the day, he wrote in his meditations, "Tell yourself, I shall meet people who are officious, ungrateful, abusive, treacherous, malicious, and selfish." His intention wasn't to feel superior to people who would act this way, but to preserve the assertion that their actions were only a result of their ignorance of good and bad, and that their behaviour wasn't contagious to him. By doing this, Marcus was able to treat everyone with compassion and adhere to the Stoic notion that humans were naturally formed to work with each other and not against. The following somewhat humorous list, from an 1890 edition of a magazine called Answers, is in a similar vein to Marcus's. It's entitled, "People We Have Met and Don't Want to." Perhaps we can use it just like Marcus would to prime our compassion reflex for the day ahead. It goes as follows. People we have met and don't want to. People who make bad puns and jokes and always expect you to laugh at them. People who have one stock quotation, which they trot out on all possible occasions, suitable or otherwise. People, elderly ones, who are always saying, "Things are changed from what they were in my time." People who talk at a concert or opera and won't let you enjoy the music yourself. People who come late to theatres when they have to pass and tread on the toes of several people on their way to their seats. People who want nothing but your candid opinion and then are offended when it does not coincide with their own. People who monopolise the talk at a party and spoil any story you may attempt to tell by interrupting or correcting you all the way through, and then observing at the end they've heard something very like that before. People who address you loudly in public streets, poke you in the ribs, and remark on your increasing stoutness when lady friends are just passing. People who enter an already crowded railway carriage and deposit their luggage without the slightest regard for the other passengers' convenience. People who lounge about, criticise and distract your attention when you're in the middle of an exciting game. People who give unnecessary and unasked for advice on subjects of which they know absolutely nothing. People who always prophesy gloomily about the weather or state of the times, and who have a ghastly memory for accidents, sudden deaths, etc. People who buttonhole you in the middle of the street when you're in a hurry to meet a friend or catch a train. People who mistake rudeness for sincerity and say, where no offence is meant, none should be taken. People who have one craze, which they inflict on you at inconvenient seasons. People who are shamelessly late for everything and think you ill-tempered for ever venturing to remonstrate. Lastly but not least, people who make no attempt, when possible, to increase the popularity and circulation of Answers magazine and never talk about it. For another reminder along these same lines, we can look to the following reproduction of one of Aesop's famous fables, The Fox and the Stork. At one time, the fox and the stork were on visiting terms and seemed very good friends. So the fox invited the stork to dinner, and for a joke put nothing before her but some soup in a very shallow dish. This the fox could easily lap up, but the stork could only wet the end of her long bill in it, and left the meal as hungry as when she began. "I'm sorry," said the fox, "the soup is not to your liking." "Do not apologise," said the stork. "I hope you will return this visit, and come and dine with me soon." So a day was appointed when the fox should visit the stork, but when they were seated at the table, all that there was for dinner was contained in a very long-necked jar with a narrow mouth, in which the fox could not insert his snout, so all he could manage to do was lick the outside of the jar. "I will not apologise for the dinner," said the stork. "One bad turn deserves another." The fable is of course a lesson in the virtue of justice. To do ourselves the most good, we must also contribute to the good of those around us, which includes preparing to meet people we don't necessarily want to, and treating people how we ourselves would wish to be treated. Further to this, it's a cowardly act to dole out harsh and dismissive treatment to your neighbours, unless you can stand the same treatment yourself. Seneca put it even more succinctly than Aesop, giving us a short directive we can keep in mind today and every day. It comes from his essay On Anger and goes as follows, quote, "Let us put ourselves in the place of the person with whom we are angry. From that point of view, we see that our anger comes from an unwarranted opinion of ourselves. We are unwilling to bear what we ourselves would have been willing to inflict."